High Point University presents A Conversation with Kevin McCarthy and Nito Cobain is a production of UNC TV in association with High Point University.
Hello, I'm Nito Cobain, president of High Point University, and welcome to this program. My guest today is a remarkable human being, an extraordinary author, an outstanding speaker, a man who's invested his life in researching purpose in your life and mine. What does it mean to be an on-purpose person? And then lately has written a wonderful book on leadership. The book is titled Chief Leadership Officer. I hope today to explore with him some ideas about leadership in our personal life and our professional life, and I hope to discuss with him purpose. What does it mean to be a person of influence and a person of impact? Kevin McCarthy, welcome to High Point University and welcome to this program.
It is absolutely a joy to be with you on this gorgeous campus on this wonderful day, and thank you for having me. I'm just honored.
Well, we're delighted to have you here, Kevin. Listen, I got to get to the topic very quickly. Why is leadership important and how does it apply to our everyday life?
Well, leadership is one of three really circles that I like to describe, three competencies. And the three competencies that I like to talk about are a technical competency that most of us need to have, a business competency, and then a leadership competency. And the intersection of those, if you think of them as three circles that intersect, at the center of that is purpose. And so leadership is the ability to basically take who you are and what you envision and what you want to do with your life and make it into a reality. Where the technical side is where a lot of education will come in and they're teaching you to be a doctor or they're teaching you to be a salesperson, but it's a technical training. And then along with that, business, not in the sense that most of us would think of business as accounting and finance, although it is all of that, but it's really at some level the business of being in business. What does it mean to, whether you're a school teacher, how do you manage the business of your classroom, the business of the students that you have? That a lot of us don't understand that there's a business of life that we're about as well. And then of course, certainly for those of us that lead organizations, there are the traditional business skills of accounting, finance, marketing, and so on and so forth that you would have. And so leadership is one of those three components that is vital. And what I've generally found is that a lot of us start off in life being technically trained, and we tend to stay in there. So here in this room we have people who do videography and they do audio and they learn that, but there's also a business, which is they could think of it as their career. Well, how do I want to move my career along? What am I trying to do to earn more money or to have a better position that's more meaningful and so on and so forth? And then leadership is, will I step forward and move on that action? Mm-hmm. And in the middle of that is purpose. And so purpose is the reason why we're here, and in the biggest sense of the word. And then there's also a smaller sense. So if somebody says, I have a reason that I want to, you're a great example. You are a businessman who found a calling at a university, but it's an extension, I'm going to assume, it's an extension of a life that you've had. And you see this, that the success to significance that you talk about so much, it is the why underneath that. And now you've just changed audiences from what used to be people like me who are speakers or businesses and so on and so forth, or employees. Now you're out there with students.
So is leadership a skill or is it a talent?
I think it's both. First of all, this opens up that can of worms, which are leaders made or are they born? And I believe everybody is a leader. We're all born as leaders. And now, at that point, we do have to acquire skills and talents of leadership. And as a result, it takes mentoring. You're a marvelous mentor. I know that from tons of people I know who know you, that you're a marvelous mentor, you're a coach. But a lot of people don't get that sort of leadership side of things. And it's interesting, years ago I had a friend of mine that was running an organization where he was trying to get more mature men to mentor younger men. And when he described what he was doing, all the mature men said, I wish I had that. So we don't get well mentored in our society. But the point of this is whether leaders are made or they're born. It's yes, it's both. And I like to look at it and say every person needs to lead their life. If you can lead your life, then you can maybe lead a family. If you can lead a family, then maybe you can lead on the job, and and so on and so forth as it goes
So
out.
in your view, therefore, that for a person to be successful in life, have a life of significance, having leadership skills is a prerequisite for that.
Absolutely. It's one of the three talents, or one of the three competencies that we need to develop.
So this is why, Kevin, at Hype University, we pay enormous attention to the development and evolution of the person. And we do believe that you can teach it, and you can, more importantly, model it, and you can incubate it. In other words, you can create environments by which people choose to be leaders, people choose to be on purpose, people choose to have a focus that can take them somewhere and make something of their life.
Yes, and your holistic approach that you use here at the university is, I think, exceptional, because you are looking at it, really those three competencies and purpose in the middle of it. You're really trying to say we have to deal with the whole person, because I can't tell you how many times, like, as a consultant in our consulting business, I have a lot of people that come to me and they say, I'm stuck in my life, I don't know how to get out of it. And if I just sort of draw those three circles with them and put purpose in the middle, now I can help them find their purpose. That's easy for me. Then giving expression to it in each one of those categories is the challenge for them. But often what I find is they are technically strong in something, but they lack the business acumen and they lack the leadership skills. And yet those are the quote unquote soft skills, which are actually the hard skills to learn, but they're learnable, teachable, and what you're doing here at High Point is exactly that, which you're wanting to have these students walk out of here prepared to do life, which is different than prepared to get a job. You want them to get a job too, but you're doing all three areas.
Purpose.
You want that
to be with purpose, on purpose. Was it Viktor Frankl who said, if you know your why, you can always manage your how? That may not be a precise quote, but something like that, that if you are clear on who you are and why you are, then you can figure out a way to live your life and earn a living and lead in some purposeful way.
Yeah. Well, for me, having been at this for 3 decades now, just the purpose piece, I mean, it's kind of I don't know why. I mean, I know why, but it's sort of like, I don't know why this is what I have. This is where my calling is, in the sense of understanding purpose, helping people be on purpose. It strikes me that I've developed technologies that allow people to write a 2-word purpose statement in a matter of minutes. And I will tell you, having done this now with tens of thousands of people, we are at it's about 80% right for most of the people. I mean, it's there, it's close compared to zero. So when you think about it, we have had millennia of people coming through looking for their purpose in life, looking for meaning, looking for why am I here at that deep cosmic level, if you will, and searching. And I'm looking at it and saying, look, I've got this technology now where literally you can go online and you go through a process and you know your purpose. So imagine, if you will, in 5 years, let's say everybody on the planet did their 2-word purpose statement. People, instead of people for all these generations looking for purpose and meaning in their lives, they can know it. And in 5 years from now, then they can all be focused more on, instead of spending their lives and wasting their time, they can be investing their lives and investing their time on why they're here and how to give that expression. That's still a difficult challenge, don't get me wrong, but it's a radical view of the world.
Well, it leads to ultimately what we all want, which is happiness.
Correct. Well, I actually say peace.
Oh, peace.
It's peace, which I think is even deeper than happiness, because it's
What is the difference between peace and happiness?
Well, happiness is transient, it's conditional. I'm happy right now. Where peace, it is unconditional. We have this deep seat. So, life can be just awful for you, but you can still go through it with a peace. And when you have that, then you're more likely to more rapidly get out of a challenging situation because your mind is calmer, your heart rate is calmer, you're not living in panic or crisis mode. And because no matter how successful anybody is, stuff happens in life, and it can send us off the deep end. But if you have a sense of peace and perspective about it, you may be very unhappy with the circumstances. It could be the death of a child, or it could be a diagnosis of cancer, or it could be all these sorts of things that are real life issues. But you have a sense of peace through it, and a sense of purpose in it. Your outcomes are likely to be far better than if your body is sitting there in stress.
That's a very interesting way to say it. Is it fair to say that a person who is happy does not necessarily have peace in their life, but a person who has peace in their life is always happy?
Well, as I said, you can have peace but be unhappy, because you can have tragic news about the death of a child or the death of a parent or a friend or something like that, but you can still be peaceful in that, but you're not happy about it. But a person who's happy...
Well, you're not happy about that particular event,
correct.
but happiness is a state of mind and heart, is it not?
Yeah. Well, I think it was years ago, I don't remember who wrote the book, but there's a book called Happiness is a Choice. And I truly do believe that. I mean, that it's not just fairy tales where they lived happily ever after. I had an experience in my life way back when I was in my mid-20s where I was not real happy with some things that were going on in my life. And I realized, why is it only in fairy tales that they get to live happily ever after? And I realized that I could make a choice that I'm going to live happily ever after. The challenge, of course, is what we're talking about here is that deep-seated peace where happiness, like you can have somebody who this weekend, somebody wins the Super Bowl or something, they win the game and they're happy, but they're miserable off the field.
Okay, so maybe it's a question of semantics. What if I insert the word joy in there? How does that change this
Joy
discussion?
to me is that exactly what you're describing. Joy is deep-seated. It's probably the cousin of, or it's the sibling of peace, let's call it that way.
I see. Give us an example of when you work with groups and have them do a two-word on-purpose statement.
Okay.
Can you give us a couple of examples of two-word on-purpose statements?
Yeah, absolutely. And then I may need to preface this a little bit because I think terms are really important. And what I've found, again, going back to the leadership concept, is the language, in my opinion, the language of leadership and strategy is confused. Okay? So if I line up 100 of my colleagues who are strategy consultants and I say define purpose, vision, mission, and values and put them in a proper order, I will probably get 100 different answers. So it's kind of like, remember the old days before they had USB for the computers and we had to find plugs and drivers and it was crazy and it was mixed up. It's kind of the way we are strategically in today's world. So if our strategy is confused, if our language is confused, then we're confused. So with that, let me walk you through purpose and then I'll get to a purpose statement. How's that? Is that good?
You're tantalizing us. Go for it.
Okay. So purpose answers this question, why am I here? And it's symbolized by the heart. So if you think of it as your heart, and I'm going to walk you through what I call the heart, head, hands, and then the gut, okay? So your heart is where your purpose lives. It's about why am I here, and it gives, it's answering the powerful questions of is life meaningful, and so on and so forth.
How does it matter what I do, etc.?
Yeah, well, let me move to that one, okay? Well, let me move to the head, okay? So the heart is here, and I like to tie it to the body. When you can tie these things to the body, then they're visceral. You can feel them. And it's also nice is when you have a challenge, you can say, I've got such a headache over this, or my mind's not wrapped around this. Chances are that's a vision problem. You're not seeing it clearly. So purpose is here, vision is here, missions are in the hands and feet, and values are in your throat and your gut. And so as I walk you through this, you'll see that vision is where am I going with my life? Do I see what the future looks like? Can I imagine? Can I plan? It has to do with that. That's what's in our minds. When you get to the missions are what you do. So these are symbolized by the hands and the feet because these are the actions that we do. So somebody here at High Point, let's say, is a faculty member, teaches. That's a mission that they have. But what is their purpose? So they start to look at why do they do this and what do they envision as a faculty member perhaps. Then you turn to the values being in your throat and your gut. So if you violate your values, you feel it first. If somebody asks you to violate your values, you have a gag response. Don't want to do that. So we take this like indecent proposal into our mouth and we want to spit it out. Mm-hmm. So we're gagging over that. But if we ingest it or we self-inflict it on ourselves, we feel it in our gut. We say, oh man, my stomach's turning over that. Listen to your body. So again, it's fascinating when you look at the number of people who retire and die. It's like a very dangerous time right when you retire, because now they feel their life has no meaning. And that's a tragedy, because what they've done is they've identified their life with their work, as opposed to understanding that maybe retirement is yet a better stage of expression of their purpose. Their purpose hasn't gone away. Their work, that particular work or chapter has closed, but their life continues on.
But they have to get, I want to follow what you're saying, so they have to get some other activity in their life to replace that work which is gone.
Correct.
But isn't that the same thing? You work here, but maybe now you volunteer here, maybe you go write a book here. Isn't that just another form of work?
Yeah, absolutely. They find something else to do. Mm-hmm. But again, I want to come back to it. Well, let me finish this little guy we call him the on-purpose pal, where your heart, what you're trying to do is you're trying to align your heart, your head, and your hands within your values. That way you're on your purpose. Mm. So there's a specific order to purpose, vision, mission, and values. So values is like a petri dish that holds this, that holds the purpose, vision, and missions. So when you look at it, you say, well, now I've retired, let's say, or I've been fired from a job, or I'm not happy on my job. What you're really saying is I'm looking for a new mission. Where do I give expression to my purpose?
I see. Mm-hmm.
So that's what's going on. Now, back to the two-word purpose statements, mm-hmm. and why this is sort of a really unique aspect, and I think contribution I'm making to the quote-unquote leadership literature out there. They start with a generic beginning, which is, I exist to serve by. So at first, it's a service concept. And then there's an ing word, which is an action verb followed by an object. So for example, a two-word purpose statement would be liberating greatness. I could see that for you.
I see.
Awakening worth, igniting joy, provoking peace. These are actual two-word purpose statements that people have. So it's a very different sort of thing. We're seeing most people are looking, when they think they're looking for purpose, they're saying, what should I do? Which is a mission, not a purpose. So the beauty of the two-word purpose statement with liberating greatness or igniting joy, something like that, is you realize it's not conditional. It is inherent. It's to who we are in our being. So another way to differentiate purpose, vision, mission, and values is purpose is your state of being, visions are what you're seeing, missions are what you're doing, and values are how you're choosing. So when you are able to separate the aspects of that, whether it's for an individual or for an organization. I mean, one of the beautiful things that you've done here at High Point is you've decided, here's our heart. Here's the heart of what we're about. We're about the students. We've got a heart for what's going on. And we want them to find their heart. We want them to know who they are. Then we want them to have a vision for their lives, and they need training. They need to know what to do, because we want them to be competent in their workplace. And then we want them to have the right values in order to make better choices in their life.
So let me give you two words, and you tell me if it's an on purpose.
I have permission to coach?
Yes.
Okay,
you have
just
permission
checking.
to coach. So serving others.
Okay, I'll tell you what that is. There's a three-way test. Purpose statements, and there's the three-way test is, and I want to be respectful of this, so I'm going to preface this by saying, I'm going to use the word God, but I want people to understand that I'm talking about God from their point of view, their perspective, almost like, I could say spirit, so it's like body, mind, spirit. I think most people can agree on body, mind, and spirit, but I'm going to use the word God. So there's a relationship between the God or the spirit, yourself, and others. So what you've described is 1/3 of the equation, others. So first, you have to have a relationship with God or Spirit. Then you have to have a relationship with yourself. Then you have a relationship with others. So that it's almost like, I describe it this way. Bandwidth is one of those things that a lot of people know about because of technology today. Most of us spend a lot of time working on developing the self and others. It's like we want to put fiber optic cable there, but the God and self one is like copper wire. We just can't get much bandwidth through there, but we've got all this structure built.
But Kevin, what's the difference between igniting, what was it, igniting?
Igniting joy or...
What is the difference in igniting joy and creating value? Or igniting joy and serving humankind?
Well, remember it begins, I exist to serve by. And so what you're doing is, let's just take igniting joy, if that was somebody's purpose statement. First they would look at it and say, where do I draw my strength for igniting joy? Because you know what? I'm going to run out. It's going to get difficult. There's dry times in everybody's life. Where do I go to get igniting of joy? For some people, that could be a walk in the mountains. It could be meditation, prayer, yoga. It could be a quiet time walking in the garden. It's these times of reflection, quality, peace, just sensing your purpose and place on the planet. Then you look at it and say, okay, am I willing to receive this igniting of joy? And that's a different ballgame, because there's the gift, which is igniting joy. But then there's that, are you going to grab a hold of it? Are you going to own it? Are you going to fully embrace it and live it out? And then there's the expression of that. And in many ways what's going on is the service towards others is the coming out of the abundance. Even if it's a meager amount that we have, it's still coming out of the abundance of that. And so what happens is now it's all. It's not an either or. It's all of these things are alive. But again, I go back to the Spirit as sort of the source. It's kind of like we're sitting in this gorgeous building with all these lights and everything. And this, we can look at the design of this and see it all there. But at the end of the day, this building is connected to a power grid. And if that source goes out, these lights go out, this goes out, you know what? We're sitting in a gorgeous, beautiful, empty building.
Yes.
But its function, to some extent, is hampered. And what's happening, most of us are sitting there in gorgeous buildings with the plugs pulled out of the wall, where the power not connected to the power source.
Which will create absence of peace and
Correct.
joy and so on. So let's tie this to leadership. So give me your definition or your profile of what you would consider to be a highly effective leader.
Okay, well, in the Chief Leadership Officer book, let me go to that just because that's kind of the thing that I'm looking at.
Sure.
The premise of that book is that CEOs, the concept of a CEO is increasingly obsolete, and they're going to be replaced by Chief Leadership Officers. And the charge of a Chief Leadership Officer, they have 3 charges. The first charge is that they are to really position the organization that they lead to be a leader in their chosen field. Whether their chosen field is a pizza shop that serves a 1-mile radius, God bless them. If it's a worldwide organization and they've got a worldwide vision, that's what they need to do. They just have to choose their field. The next one is to position, for the leader, is to position the people in the organization to be leaders in their lives and work. Okay, and see, this is where I'm so honored to be with you, because see, I see you as a Chief Leadership Officer. You may not call yourself that. Maybe I'm teaching you something today. You gave me permission to coach. I'm taking advantage of it. That now you've got, you're positioning an organization to be a leader in its chosen field. Now you're saying, how do I take the people that are here and position them to be leaders in their lives? And then the third charge you have is to integrate those so that they are working together. And that's there's a principle I have called the on-purpose principle. And the on-purpose principle says when the purpose of the person and the purpose of the organization are aligned, meaningfully aligned, they're one.
Sure.
And that's the magic.
Yeah, isn't that the foundational principle behind creating a culture in an organization that is both effective and sustainable.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, and that's, again, it goes back to those three competencies. I see a lot of companies that will be technically good at what they do. They're manufacturing something, they're good at the business side, but there's 3 leaders in a company of 3,000. And they're wondering, why are we not getting the profitability that we want? It's because they're grasping on to power, or they're operating out of fear, or they're operating out of ego, as opposed to serving them and letting them go.
So here's what happens in the corporate world, is that quite often people who become chief executive officers don't necessarily come out of this treasure chest of leadership competencies, but rather they are an outstanding engineer in a technical company who then becomes the CEO. They are the great, financial wizard who then becomes, and so on. So you would agree with me that being the chief leadership officer vis-a-vis your book is a noble pursuit, but it's an uncommon situation.
It is, and
so how do we change it? How do we practically? Obviously, if in every organization we have a chief leadership officer and we follow the 3 tests that you have just outlined, we would have a utopic world in which we can all exist.
Correct. That's what I call the on-purpose
planet. That's not reality.
The on-purpose planet.
Yes.
The way that we do that is actually, it's a pretty straightforward proposition, and that is that you, the whole premise of the chief leadership officer is that we're doing business incompletely right. Okay, that's my term for it. We have 2 of the 3 competencies covered, but we're missing this 3rd one. And that is
the 3rd one of how do we get the 2 to work together?
Well, this is the technical, the business, and the leadership with purpose in the middle.
Yes.
So first of all, there's going back to what you described, is businesses have 3 competencies in the purpose in the middle, or actually the 4th competency, if you want to call it. And individuals have that. So, but when we're able to align them, that's what we're trying to do. So at some level, I look at it and say, businesses are, and again, I'm a business guy. This has been my career in business and as a business consultant as well. Businesses are primarily organized around 2 things: money and structure, or a hierarchy, an organizational chart. What I have proposed in this book is that there's a 3rd missing element which comes across it, and that is the human dynamic of what is missing. That's the leadership piece. So one of the ways that somebody can know that they're in a CEO system or an ecosystem, it's a different ecosystem, is if they have a human resources department. That, in my opinion, is a pejorative term towards people, because you're seeing people as resources, not as people. And this comes out of Frederick Taylor, but I won't go into that right now.
What's a better term? Human systems or human?
Well, they can call them talent. They can call them, like Disney, where I live in Orlando, they call them their cast. They have a role to play. They could call them their crew. We've got a crew around here, but they're not resources, they're a crew. And so it's a way of looking at it and understanding. And again, that's language that comes from the top.
Some organizations call them associates, partners.
Correct. It depends, again, on the nature of the business and so on and so forth that's going on. Even faculty is a word that implies that a faculty means you have a capacity to think or a capacity to do something. So that's a good term in that sense. But whenever you call people assets, pieces, resources, to me, that is a dehumanizing language that usually comes out of the Industrial Revolution.
What about the term brain trust?
Well, I guess that, why not? I mean, it's that to me is a different sort of concept in terms of maybe apples and oranges, but because to me a brain trust is when you pull people together for a think tank sort of thing where you want to get a solution to something. But again, they could have a permanent brain trust.
So for someone watching us today asking the question, all right, we've talked about purpose.
Right.
And we've talked about to how to be an on-purpose person. And we've talked about that peace is where true joy emanates from, because you are at peace in your life, and therefore you can deal with adversities in ways that perhaps are abundantly useful versus falling apart and giving up and becoming desperate about it. And we've talked about leadership in the context that organization would benefit measurably from having a chief leadership officer instead of a chief executive officer, and that chief leadership officer therefore is creating in their organization this notion that we need to be the leader in our discipline, and also creating in all of their associates, in all of their crew, in all of their team, the capacity to be leaders in their own roles, in their own lives, and then merging the two for the common good and the common purpose of service and delivery of services. Where the complexity, I think, comes in is in the practicality of an organization, let's say. Many are involved with us here at High Point University, where a CEO has 30,000 employees. He or she don't have, a team of 5 people. They're 30,000 employees. Add to that, those employees are globally, geographically distributed. They're not all in one location. Add to that they're working in a highly competitive world that demands of you day in, day out attention to innovative technology, distribution systems, now, artificial intelligence entering the picture, et al. How does a chief leadership officer make sense of all that? On the one hand, maybe he or she is running a public company and they've got shareholders looking for return on investment. On the other hand, they have all the goodwill and desire to make it work, but it is a tall order. It is a tough thing to do. That's why we talk in business a lot about developing a culture in which, through which, by which people choose to become at peace, or people choose to be leaders, or people choose to rise to their highest level of extraordinary behavior. Talk about that. How, from your own experience, maybe you can think of an example or two of where someone has been exceptionally successful making that happen, and somebody else, try as they may day in, day out, find it practically impossible.
Okay, I'm going to be, I don't want to come off as patronizing. I think what you have done, I know what you have done here at High Point is a beautiful example of what I'm describing, because you have articulated clarity of purpose, vision, mission, and values. You have attempted to liberate the greatness of each person in this institution, and you have integrated them into a cohesive whole. So you may be the person to better answer that question than me. I can tell you how to do it, but you are doing it in that regard.
Okay, so
I respect that. That's why it's remarkable when you look at the progress you've made. And you got here in 2005, and you're looking 13 years later, and 7 years of amazing. And what you've done is you've liberated people's ability to be. And so this is the part, I think, that CEO with 30,000 people out there, that is born and raised in this ecosystem, the CEO system of command and control, is got to get into their brain that you've got to free these people's hearts, heads, and hands, because then when they can do that, they're remarkably gifted, talented people. You see it walking around this campus every day. Remarkable kids, remarkable faculty, because they're free to be who they are. And what happens is we have these, when we would put these people constantly in boxes, and they're valued in a certain way, and they have a certain pay grade, and they have a certain, and I realize that's the old system where they feel I'm a cog in the wheel of progress. And
so it creates pride and therefore
correct
desire to do better. First of all, thank you for that. I appreciate that observation. I wish I knew the step-by-step connecting the dots as to how we make that happen here.
Right.
The truth is, what worries me about leadership and the amplification of really solid leadership skills in a wide spectrum to serve a lot of people and help a lot of organizations, is that often organizations are a reflection of the leader, and often that leader has a visceral capacity to do certain things. They don't know where they picked it up from. We do things that just become second nature to us. But that doesn't mean that we can duplicate that.
Correct.
In measurable ways. You know, I am maybe too simplistic to believe that sometimes all the pieces come together in the right way, at the right time, with the right people to make good things happen.
Right.
To a great extent, I think that's what happened to us at High Point University. I don't think it's the skill or knowledge of any one person or collection of people. I think it is it is our time, and these things happen. And when you have a nucleus that works, you seem to attract. The universe naturally seems to be attracted to that, and so you have more people. So now the circle becomes wider and wider, deeper and deeper, better and better. But the real question is, as we we have here at High Point University leadership fellows, for example, who are outstanding young men and women who want to be a part of a developmental process so that they become leaders of the highest order. So we have to teach that. We have to create an environment in which they can transform themselves into that. And we must have an engineered mechanism for that. We have to have a process, right? A, B, C, D. What about the person who does not have that inclination? What about the CEO who would like to be a CLO, Chief Leadership Officer, but neither has the inclination, or maybe they have the desire, but they don't have the natural inclinations to do such. And
Sure.
yet they are profoundly useful in their organization because they are wonderful. Think of Steve Jobs as an example. Steve Wozniak, the co-founder of Apple Computer, is actually an artist in residence at High Point University. He is our innovator in residence. He comes every semester, teaches our students, connects with them by telephone and email, conducts seminars for them, and so on. So is Mark Randolph, the co-founder of Netflix. So are a dozen other people of that ilk. Steve Wozniak told me in an interview like this that Steve Jobs was a very difficult person to work with, that he may be, and this is conjecture on my part, I didn't know the person, but I've heard and read and understood that maybe he didn't have peace by your own definition. Maybe he was not a chief leadership officer, and yet he built a remarkable business and changed the way the world operates. Right? And you read about all these people who have created things like Google and Netflix and Twitter, and many of those, I don't know if they're chief leadership officers. What do you say about that?
Yeah, I mean, we have a long history of remarkable accomplishments by a lot of people. Here's my point on all of this: is there is a massive societal undercurrent that's going on. And what got us through the Industrial Revolution and into the digital age has worked extraordinarily well. It has its problems, it's not perfect. What I'm looking at is the Chief Leadership Officer is the natural extension of that. So that I'm saying, look, in the future, if you want to position your business, this is the way you want to look, this is the way you want to think. In this book, there's something called the Clo Integrity Map, and it gives a basic blueprint for, remember I talked about there's money and organization. There's a blueprint that says you start with purpose and you lead yourself through. So here's what's interesting, is what I find in my consulting work with CEOs, they're looking for an effect, a result, a profit, a whatever it may be, but they don't have a cause. And purpose is the cause. And now if you put a cause, you're more likely to get the effect you want. But what we do is we say result, 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 result. And we wonder why. I look at it and say, as successful as Stephen Jobs was, he might have been 20 times more effective had he been a CLO mindset. And that's not, massively successful company. And that's conjecture on my part. But the long-term thing that's going on in the society is, we came from hunter, think about the on-purpose pal. Okay, you got your heart, your head, and your hands. Way back when, we were hunter-gatherers. We did the work of our hands. Then we got a little smarter. Our heads freed up our hands. Okay? Now, what's happening is we're in this digital age, where we're information age. We're in our heads. Now what's going on is the next progression of society is to say we're moving to our hearts. The generation that is in High Point right now is the first generation, perhaps, that could afford to actually pursue their purpose in society and make it. It's been very few people, because we were in our hands world, we were in our head world, now we're moving into this heart world. And what I'm looking at is saying, okay, look, I'm not asking a CEO to make a radical transformation. I'm saying have awareness, begin to think like this, make a transition to this. If you have the awareness, you're likely to be doing business more completely right. And in the process, as you honor people in the midst of this, you're going to see their genius, their leadership will emerge, or better yet, they'll leave and find some other place, but they aren't taking the spot of the genius that should be there. And that's really what I'm looking at with this.
And that makes a lot of sense. And you see that as cross-cultural?
Yes.
So it doesn't matter if we are in Asia, or we are in Europe, or we are in North America. Your premise is people are people are people are people?
Correct. And there are certain societies that are less developed. At some level what I would say is if I was talking to a group of business people in a developing country, I would say to them, look, you have the benefit of learning the lessons of the lack of tapping into people's talent that has occurred over the last 150 years. Now, let's build it right. Or like these young entrepreneurs that would be coming out of High Point, for instance, I would say to them, look, learn what it means to be in business, learn all these things, but learn what it means to be a CLO, because that's where it's headed, folks.
All right, so before our time is up, I hope some listeners are asking the question, I want to learn to be a CLO.
Right.
I want to do it in my team. I want to do it with my group. I want to do it in my business. I want to do it in a nonprofit organization. I want to do it in my community group. What are the 2 or 3 things one must do to learn to become a CLO, a Chief Leadership Officer?
I have a book. Certainly, there's a book called Chief Leadership Officer. We have a tool online to help people articulate their 2-word purpose statement. They go to a website for that. It's onpurpose.me, and they can go in and they can have themselves, they can go by themselves and go do this, or they can have their team do it, so that they can begin to plant the seeds. Where a lot of this came out of is I found I was doing consulting work like 30 years ago, and I found that we would do strategy work with a company. And we would go off on a retreat, and all the executives, and they would all be excited and everything. Then they go back to work, and nobody else knew what was going on.
Sure.
And their language was different, and so people were there. And I said, okay, what if I did this? What if I created a system where I could have the people understand their purpose, vision, mission, and values, and lead their lives? Now, they're going to turn around to the company and say, well, what's our purpose, vision, mission, and values? And so the On-Purpose Person, the first book I wrote back in 1992 and then updated in 2009, was really designed to break this conundrum and say, let's help people know who they are in their lives. Let's help them get on purpose. Then the On-Purpose Business book came out in 1998 and was updated again in 2013. Let's help them, the business people, understand what's going on. And then I found that there was, and that has principles in it, like the on-purpose principle that I talked about, or the purpose of the person's aligned with the purpose of the organization. But what I found was that there needed to be a next level, and that's the CLO book. Because what would happen is I'd have people who were like a division president, And they'd say, oh my gosh, I'm so excited about this. I want to do this, blah, 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 blah. And then they'd get to the CEO, and the CEO was like, no. So I realized I needed to reach into the C-suite, to the highest levels of corporations, and begin to influence the thinking there. And I'm not optimistic about that. What I am optimistic about is reaching the young people who are going to be building it from scratch. It's kind of like, we grew up with rotary phones. They don't even know what a rotary phone is. I hope in 5, 10, 15 years, maybe they don't even know what a CEO is because they're all CLOs. It's just kind of, this is the new way. This is the technology.
It's a natural way to evolve.
It's the leadership technology of today, and people will build on this message.
All right, Kevin, how does a person know if he or she is on purpose?
Again, I go back to peace. They have a sense of peace about it.
How do I know if I have peace?
Check your blood pressure. I don't know. I think that's so personal.
Is there a set of qualities I check off? Is there a bunch of characteristics I will feel, see, or perhaps other people observe in me?
That's a big question. I think it's true for each person. Each person's peace is going to be different. I think that's, it's kind of it's like defining beauty. Beauty for you is going to be different than beauty for somebody else, and so on and so forth. So we all have to sort of find that. But I think when we have it, we know it, and when we don't, it's innate to know whether we're at peace or not.
Okay, I'm John Doe, and I really want to have a life that's on purpose.
Right.
What are the first 3 steps I must do, or the first 3 questions I must ask?
Yeah.
Or what is the inventory I must take to travel down this path?
Well, what I do is I start very simply. The on-purpose person actually outlined the process for this, which is I first write and say, what do you want? What do you want in your life? I don't go deep to purpose right off the bat. I usually say, what do you want? And I do this with my corporate clients as well. What do you want? And then they define it. And then we will clarify it into purpose, vision, mission, values. We sort of sort it out. Well, this is so on and so forth. And then I've got a tool. I'm a tennis player. I taught tennis professionally prior to business school and everything like that, and even paid my way partway through business school teaching tennis. And so what I do is I ask people what they want. I put it into 7 categories of life, which is not unique to me. Kind of like family, finances, spiritual, material, so on and so forth. And then I put them into tennis tournaments. So I have them run break it into the category. So they put it into a tennis tournament, and then they choose which is most important. So they're advancing, not eliminating. They choose what is most important as they move through this tennis tournament.
So you're describing the process of getting there.
Correct.
But if I only had 2 minutes to decide I'm on purpose or not, what do I do?
I'd say go to the onpurpose.me website and go.
Okay.
It takes 3 minutes to find your purpose statement, and then you've got it, and now you can refine it over time. It comes with like 10 emails. Refine it.
Sure. What about? I'm not sure if I'm a leader or not. What are the 3? What is the test to tell me if I'm an effective leader or not?
Can you give me a little bit more about this person? A student, let's say?
Well, let's say it's a young person who seeking the truth in life.
Okay.
And saying, I think I lead. I'm not sure if I'm a good leader. I don't want to just go read a leadership book. I just want to test my heart, my soul, my personhood. If you do this, if you know how to communicate, if you know how to think, if you know how to live, if you have balance, therefore you're likely to be an effective leader.
Yeah, what I would say to that person is, it's almost a philosophical answer, but it's a practical one as well. That did you get up this morning? Did you shower? Did you brush your teeth? Did you comb your hair? Did you show up on your job, or did you show up on class on time? You know what? You're leading. We see the glass half empty, not the glass half full. And we tend to focus on the empty spots rather than the full spots. You are leading your life. So if somebody's out there and they feel like I'm not a leader, I'm sitting here saying to you, yes, you are.
You are.
You don't recognize that.
You can certainly sharpen.
You can sharpen those skills, and you may not be in a position or a relationship that you're happy with, but you can sharpen those skills.
But you would agree with me that there's some people who's merely apathetic about these things.
Absolutely. And
what do we do with those people? How do we help them? How do we inspire them?
Well, I guess the only way I know how to inspire them is to basically, I mean, I'm on a mission to eradicate meaninglessness from this planet. And what you're describing is meaninglessness, which is one of the reasons why I look at it and say, when you understand you have a purpose in life, you have a cause, you have a reason for being here. You may not have discovered it yet, and that may depress you, and that may make you apathetic, and that may make you turn to all sorts of things you shouldn't be turning to. But it's not by accident that you are here. And you can choose hope or hopelessness. And I'm here to say, choose hope. And when you choose that hope, then look for purpose. Look for it. You will find it. You can find hopelessness. If you want to walk around, it's all around us. But if you want to find hope, you can find the hope.
So when I speak to audiences, I typically make a statement like this. I want you to examine it for me and tell me where I'm wrong. So I say, when you have purpose, you will have passion. And where you have passion, you will have energy. And where you have energy, you can create action. And when you take action, you're likely to create success. And when you experience success, you are likely to find significance. And when you find significance in your life, you will have a sense of joy in your life. And when you have a sense of joy in your life, it reverts right back to a greater purpose. And we go over and over and over again. Which of those steps am I erroneously misleading humanity in a hopeless, helpless manner?
You are not. Let me maybe clarify a couple of the things in there. Passion. Passion is a word a lot of people use, and it's a word that's grossly misunderstood. Passion, most people think of as I'm excited about. You know, I'm joyful about it. I can't wait to do this. Passion actually means to me, are you willing to pay the price? And the problem is from purpose to passion, for a lot of people, is the width of a football field. And they're not willing to cross it. So until you find something that is so meaningful that you're willing to pay the price for it, you don't have that passion. So the rest of that chain that you've put in place, it relies upon getting over that threshold. It's a weak link in the chain. And for most people, what happens, they'll skip over it because they don't want to pay the price. Therefore, whenever they get out here, the chain breaks, and now they have despair. And the other part is the ending in significance. I look at it and say, it doesn't end with significance, it begins with significance. You are significant. You have a reason for being. You don't have to prove your significance. You just have to give it expression, and that's being on purpose.
That's beautiful. Well said.
Thank
Very
you.
inspiring, very informative. Gives us a lot to think about. And I hope that people who listen to us chat about this acknowledge that when God breathed in our nostrils and gave us life, God intended for us to be extraordinary human beings. And that means purpose, and that means passion in the definition you gave it. Doing what you must do, paying your dues, cross the chasms of life, cross your Rubicon to get to where you want to get. But ultimately, it's also about planting seeds of greatness in the hearts, minds, and souls with whom you work, because the greatest of gifts in life is the gift of being fulfilled because you have helped somebody else achieve their goals. I think it was a Scottish theologian who once said, always give without remembering, always receive without forgetting. I find that to be a great source of purpose when you find joy and celebrate the success and the escalation of progress in other people's lives. Kevin McCarthy, you're an insightful guy. I could talk to you for another half a day or more. Your books are fantastic. Chief Leadership Officer, and your books on purpose person and on purpose life. I hope you'll come back again to the campus of Hyper University, but mostly I hope you will keep traveling the highways and byways of life and enlightening people's lives and sharing with them the kind of philosophical, meaningful insights that you've shared with me today. Thank you so much for being with us today. Thank you, Kevin.
quality public television is made possible through the financial contributions of viewers like you, who invite you to join them in supporting UNC TV.